All right. Hello, my name is Jay Carpenter of the PhoneWord Forum, and today is Wednesday, July 30th, 2014. It's 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are having a candidate forum consisting of some of the people running for the board of directors of the SMS 800 Inc. So, let's see, did someone just join?
Karen Turner from Hypercube Telecom.
Hi, Karen. Welcome. Somebody else just joined?
Hi, Jay. This is Bob Beatty.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Okay. So let me go down the list of folks that I have so far. We have Brian Tofik from Flow. Let's see, Flow. Is it Flow Source?
Flow route.
Flow Route. I'm sorry. And we have who is a candidate for the board. We have Doug Davis from Hypercube, as well as Karen from Hypercube, and Doug is a candidate. We have Michael Rothschild on the line. Hello, did somebody just join? Okay, we have Michael Rothschild on the line from ATL Communications, who is a candidate. And we have Bob Beatty from, in Impact Telecom, who's also a candidate on the line. And who else did I miss? Who would like to announce themselves? Okay. So the way the PhoneWord forum works is this is a once-a-month open forum for anyone who would like to. Yeah. Brian Noah is supposed to join us, and I'm not sure where he's at this point. So I'm getting a message from Brian about Noah Rafalco, who's also a candidate. So if you're watching this and you're trying to connect via the Google Hangout, at this point, will you please just dial into the conference bridge, and we'll connect you that way. So the PhoneWord Forum is a once-a-month session where we have various topics concerning communications, media, and so forth. And this month, we're very fortunate to have 4 or 5 of the candidates that are running for the board of directors for SMS 800 Inc. And this is an opportunity for the candidates to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about why they're running for the board of directors of SMS 800 Inc. It's also an opportunity for some of the folks that have dialed in to ask questions, and I know there are some folks that have dialed in and haven't announced themselves yet, but let's just go ahead and get started at this point. So, welcome. Somebody just joined?
Yeah, Greg Fernandez, GHE Telco.
Hey, Greg. Welcome.
Thanks.
So right now, for the candidates, I have Doug Davis, Michael Rothschild, Bob Beatty, Brian Tofeg, and anybody else that's a candidate that's on. All right. So I'm going to flip a coin, and that will determine whether we start from the top of the alphabet or the bottom of the alphabet as to who goes first. And I think what I'll do is I'll just give you like 10 minutes apiece to talk about, to introduce yourself, your company, and why you're running for the SMS 800 board. So I just flipped a coin, and I've got heads, which is, that means that Bob, you are up. And Bob, is it okay, and for the rest of the candidates, is it okay if I put your LinkedIn profile on the Hangout so that people can see that? Okay, great.
Of course.
That sounds good.
Okay. So Bob, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, first of all, the reason why I've decided to run for the board is I think these issues that are facing the SMS The 800 industry are obviously at a critical time. I think there's a lot of change afoot and coming. It's obviously very important for our company since we do run a nationwide B2B network and participate a lot, do a lot of 800 service. It has obviously great implications to us, and I think as an industry as a whole, to make sure that we guide it in the right direction to ensure competition and ensure a fair and level playing field, and take advantage of some of the opportunities we have by expanding the information pass and the information set used in routing to improve routing capabilities, to improve message header information, to allow for more accurate routing and more accurate billing. I think those are very key as we look forward to where we're going. From a functionality, I think with the sophistication that now exists in the networks and the capabilities that we have from a processing and just pure network power perspective, I believe we can offer a much higher degree of advanced services for disaster recovery, not only for individual companies, but also for entire networks, to allow greater levels of recovery for companies to be able to manage their 800 servers and how things are routed. So, not sure what else, Jay, you wanted to go over there, and that's really where we see, the needs for the industry.
Great. Well, let's open it up. Anybody have any questions for Bob? Okay, Bob, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What do you see in terms of the path for the transition to the all-IP network and how it impacts toll-free? And before you answer that, Bob, I'm going to mute everyone because there's a little background noise here. So to speak, hit #6, and then you can be unmuted. Okay.
All callers are muted and they can unmute themselves.
So Bob, you'll need to hit *6 to unmute yourself.
*6, not #6. Got it.
Okay.
For the, as the transition to IP and how that affects, I think it actually enables us to take the opportunity to change the way the routing tables work so that you have greater flexibility that brings. I think the IP interconnect capabilities that allow us to have a larger number of networks meshed together, again, to be able to deal with the disaster recovery capabilities, to the granularity of your routing capabilities, and I think moving to as going into an IP interconnect that allows, it's just going to increase that connectivity and flexibility, because it's going to be easier to get larger sections of networks connected by a single IP connections as opposed to having to have individual trunking at the tandem level. So that is where I see that moving to.
Okay, great. Any other? Now, Bob, did you participate in the numbering testbed workshop at the FCC in March?
We did not. No.
Okay.
We did participate in some other testing, but not in that one.
Okay, great. All right. So, any other questions for Bob? If you have a question, please press *6. That will unmute you. And if you don't have a question at this point, please remain muted with *6. Okay. So let's move on to Doug Davis of Hypercube. And Doug, if you could hit *6 to unmute, that will allow you to talk. If you could just introduce yourself and say why you're running for the board.
Okay, sure. This is Doug Davis. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Hypercube, and Hypercube, of course, is also a REST org, and we have a unique place in the toll-free space in that we handle billions of toll-free calls on behalf of other companies daily. So we were kind of uniquely situated in here as an intermediate toll-free provider as well as a rest board. So we've got a dual role there. The main reason I'm running is we spend a lot of time, of course, you guys all read our filings. We have a pretty active outreach program, and SMS 800 has been on our radar a long time. We work with a lot of rest boards, we work with a lot of the IXCs, and we see a lot of the issues that everybody's facing out there. Everything from what my colleague just mentioned, things like route capacity and route complexity issues, to number identification and call party identification and other types of signaling issues. In fact, we've got products that are wrapped around the weaknesses of the SMS 800 space right now to, enrich data so people know where calls are coming from. So there's a lot of stuff there, but the fundamental reason is the transition. We have a lot of our customers that have asked us to do things non-traditional, non-TDM, and we have to build platforms and work with them. And then when we say, "Oh, you can't do that," they ask us why, and we say, "Well, that's a limitation of the SMS environment." And in this day and age, you get utter bewilderment from some of these customers because you can't do certain things that would make sense to the rest of us. The costs are very high, and the technology is very old, and it needs some evolutionary guidance. And the main reason I got involved in this and involved in the ADIS organizations and others is to help provide some evolutionary guidance here and find a way to do more with and cost us all less. So that's my 2 cents.
Great.
5 seconds, 2 cents.
Great. So any questions for Doug? If you have a question, please hit *6 to unmute. If you don't have a question, please stay on mute. Okay. All right, and we'll have time for questions at the end and additional comments if anyone thinks of things you'd like to add. So let's go on to Michael Rothschild of ATL Communications. Michael, will you introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for the board of SMS 800 Inc. And it also might be handy if you each mention the positions that you're running for, because I know some of you are running for multiple positions. Go ahead, Michael. Michael, you might want to hit *6 to unmute.
Okay, I apologize for that.
No problem.
I actually had *6 and the mute button on my phone, so I wanted to make sure I was extra quiet.
Double quiet.
Mike Rothschild, as Jay said, I am with ATL out of Central Oregon. We are an independent rest board. I've been with the company for a short while, only a few months, and so my LinkedIn profile probably, if you put it up, is not going to be up to date. But I have ATL is the first independent rest board, and it was founded by Aaliyah Christopherson, who was a part of the 1984, unbundling of toll-free. And we at ATL are very passionate about toll-free, and it's very important for us as an organization to make sure that toll-free remains relevant for a long time going forward. So my goal in running for the board is to obviously do some of the things that both Doug and Bob mentioned, which is, the technology is way outdated. The Box have basically neglected to pay attention to the industry as a whole and have been only developing the things that they saw as relevant. As a result, the rest of the toll-free industry, or toll-free customers specifically, have suffered by this kind of stagnation. So my hope would be that this new board, and I hope to be a part of the new board, making decisions based on the direction of the technology, the additional functionality that we have yet to tap into, and obviously, maintaining toll-free as an independent product and kind of the way it's managed and routed, I think, is unique and a necessary distinction between toll-free and BID. So I want to make sure that those, for our customers who invested a lot of money in marketing and advertising their toll-frees, that those toll-frees remain relevant going forward. You know, what I bring to the board, I was a part of the toll-free transition committee. So there were, I believe, a dozen and a half, it's been a few years, but there are a dozen and a half companies that came together on a voluntary basis to talk about what the rules are for transitioning, creating a board essentially, and transitioning the tariff from the box to SMS 800. I'm very active in that space as a member of SNAC and a member of some of the other toll-free organizations and routing organizations here domestically. You know, we hope to, ATL hopes to continue to be an active participant and an industry leader in those spaces. I'm running for the large rest board. We manage a little over, or just under 2 million numbers currently, and so we are hoping that either the as large or the large rest board will be a good fit for me to help have ATL voices, ATL and our customers voices there in the future of SMS.
Great. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to briefly flash Bayan's LinkedIn page on the Hangout, and I am going to switch over live to Bayan. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Bayan Tofik, and I'm running for the small rest board and that large board seats. I'm the CEO of FlowRoute. We are an unfunded, bootstrapped company that has become profitable over the last 7 years and has customers in over 100 countries. And we're a rest board as well as a CLEC. We've been very involved in regulation. The numbering workshop you were talking about in March, I participated in, and I believe we met briefly at that workshop.
Correct.
My interest in this is that there's a lot of complexity coming together in the industry with the convergence of internet technologies with traditional telecom. Voice services today are 1,000 times more expensive than data for no technological reason other than the legacy systems that are in place. Access to telephone numbers is difficult compared to access to data services. It's a lot easier to get a Gmail account or a Skype ID than just to get a phone number for a consumer, and control is limited. In the data world, you have control at the infrastructure, at the service and application layers. In the telecom world, it's all walled off. And figuring out how to work with some of the existing systems without completely revamping what's out there is important. Some of the issues that we're facing today are regulatory, some are technological, some are industry. One of the points that intersects in all of these is toll-free messaging. Toll-free messaging is something that's happening. There's been a little bit of work done on that space, but it's not being done by neutral parties, and there's work being done at the CTIA with toll-free text messaging, but SMS 800 has been pretty inactive in a lot of those discussions. In terms of automation, there is a total lack of automation for certain RESTworks tasks still. We still have paper forms flying around or faxes going back and forth for RESTwork changes. The impact of IP networks on the evolution of the SMS is also it's an important point to consider from multiple perspectives. One is portability correction on SCPs. Today we rely on the calling number, and if the JIP is available, the JIP hopefully to route numbers. And as we've all seen, JIP is just not something that's working for the industry. And I don't think it makes sense to say we need to mandate JIP and go forward with this technology that is really a legacy technology that's been a bandit solution. We've got to look at alternatives, how to do LNP correction in SCPs, how to change some of the ways that we do routing, and also how do we open up some of the optional alternate routing fields. I think that there's a lot that the NPAC can learn from SMS 800 and SMS 800 can learn from NPAC. NPAC has done some interesting thing with optional routing fields recently within their LSMS for enabling messaging, voice, video, and so on. And as we look to the IP transition, especially with the CTO of the FCC saying that telephone numbers in 5 years are no longer going to be assigned to service providers and are going to be a means of providing identity as well as routing, we have to look at how can we extend the current systems without completely overhauling them. Because the traditional way that a lot of these legacy systems have been designed, including our own SMS 800 SMS, is we have complex requirements that are put in place, lots of validation discussions done around that, and we have this monolithic project come out of it all after a decade or so, and by the time it comes out, it's already obsolete, and we're unable to adapt to the challenges that need to be met today. So one point that's very interesting for me is how can we balance the need to support the current antiquated LTI and mechanized interfaces with modern technology trends? How can we add RESTful APIs on top of that as an interface layer, as a translational layer into the current mechanized interfaces? How can we add efficient interfaces for REST boards and SCPs? And at the same time, not hinder ourselves with some of these legacy issues that come up within SMS. For example, we have hundreds of numbers today within SMS 800 that have multiple REST forks for different regions. Either they're US-Canada splits, or in very rare cases, they're split across state lines, and it creates all kinds of complexity in the design of process. And I think simplicity and elegance are necessary. We can't let a few hundred numbers get in the way of our progression. This is another topic I brought up at the numbering workshop in March. There's a sore lack of understanding of how the toll-free network works by a lot of people in the local numbering space, and vice versa. And the FCC, as far as we can tell, wants to converge these systems. And so we've got to look at these together. Messaging, which so far has been completely ambiguous in terms of whether it's a data service or a regulated service, the FCC has made no rulings on it, has been causing problems for users. Right now, there's the registry for messaging, which is net number, can be written into by either REST forks or two other companies that have specialized access because they were grandfathered in because it's not a regulated space. There's no neutral administrator. NetNumber is a company that's in charge of messaging, and so there's a lot of various areas, a lot of complexity coming together from the technology and industry and regulatory spaces, and I think we need to have expertise that brings these various areas together and looks at how we can drive the cost down, open up access and control to users, and create a simple and elegant system where we're not saying we need to keep everything in place just because that's the way we've done it for 50 years.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And by the way, you stumped me at the workshop when you were talking about numbers having multiple REST orgs. You were correct. You were talking about a handful of numbers, and I think that's a great point, that a handful of numbers really are kind of a corner case that should be dealt with and should not hinder the transition to an all IP space. So any questions for Bayan? Okay, if you have questions, again, please press *6 to unmute. And okay, so Bayan, I have a question for you. How do you see the transition happening from what we currently have into what's planned for the all IP network?
Well, I think that there are a few different pieces to that have to be split apart. One is the all IP in terms of the last mile. There's also the all IP on the numbering side, which was the discussion we were having at the FCC in March together. There's a lot of ambiguity there, and it's a very ambitious plan, in my opinion. The all IP transition has some complexity because there are many stakeholders involved with very, very different desires and needs. Today, the telephone network is a parallel network to the internet. Still, at the same time, we have the backbones of major and also smaller players running on IP protocol, whether it's on public internet or private IP connectivity. There's a desire by a lot of players to keep these networks separate. There's also a desire by certain organizations like Newstar to not do that because they have a desire to be tied into as many individuals as possible, and so Newstar is one example of an organization that's very interested in having numbers directly allocated to users, having phone numbers with passwords, which is one of the things that the CTO of the FCC brought up multiple times in March. In terms of the routing side of things, I don't want to dive into that too much because I think that there's a lot of things happening with access charges disappearing, with USF being completely revamped, tariff structure and CABS billing and all these other things, and it's hard to tell where that's going to go, especially with the obsolescence of LATAs coming into play very soon, which is going to really change the way that we look at billing in the market. On the numbering side alone, I think it's important to give users direct access. We've had issues of hoarding. We've had issues of UBR rejections for customers who haven't paid toll-free bills, for example, where the CLEC and the REST-BORG are one and the same. In the local numbering side and with NPAC portability, we allow ports through regardless of billing disputes as a consumer protection issue. There's frankly no enforcement right now. The toll-free REST-BORG change, which is the equivalent of porting a number on the local side, is much easier than doing an LNP. But I've personally seen cases where it's taken weeks because REST-BORGs don't reply, or because there's no automated process, because there's no timers like there is in the NPAC. And SMS 800 doesn't enforce some of these rules. And at the same time, we've put complaints into SMS 800 who've said you need to go to the FCC. We've went to the FCC. I have a lot of close relationships with a lot of the regulators there, as well as every single attorney working there and numbering I've spoken to on the phone or on a conference call before. And they said, well, this is an SMS 800 issue. SMS 800 is our subsidiary for the regulation of toll-free numbers. And so there are major things falling through the cracks. And I think SMS 800 is in a really unique position. SMS 800 has a structure that was way ahead of its time, having a separate layer outside of the service provider layer to manage the numbers, the rest board layer. And there's been talk of this on the numbering side for local numbers too. So I think SMS 800 has a position where it can really innovate in the telecom space and set the framework and be a proof of concept in some ways as to how this evolution should take place. I don't know all the answers, and I think that there are a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me in specific areas of this. But SMS 800 is a system with limited scope that's already non-geographic, that already has a two-tier system, and has a system that can be easily extended with a shell similar to how NPAC added these optional routing fields. It could be done on a shell on top of a legacy system. The SCP structure can also be extended with a shell without much technological complexity on an optional basis. So
I agree. I think you're bringing up some great points, Brian. And I've been active with the Future Numbering Working Group, which is a working group under the North American Numbering Council, and often the toll-free administration and structure and architecture is one that's looked upon as kind of an example to at least look at some ideas as to how things could work with the geographic numbering as it stands now. So I would like to go back to the candidates and ask basically one question. If you're elected to the board, or during your term on the board, if you could accomplish one thing, what would that one thing be? And I'm going to go back through the rotation and ask Bob Beatty if you'll address that question.
Jay, I apologize. I did not follow your question, so if you could repeat it, that would be
sure. Bob, if during your term on the board, if you could accomplish one thing, what would that one thing be?
It would be the expansion of the routing capabilities to allow for more accurate information to be passed. I don't remember which gentleman said it, but regarding like JIT, for example, to have greater origination and source information in the call flow. I think that the IP transition is very critical, but I also think it is even more critical that we have more sophisticated routing as it relates to geographic and origination sources.
Okay, Bob, it sounds like you're touching a little bit upon what I would consider to be identity management.
Absolutely.
Do you have any further thoughts in the realm of identity management? Because that's coming up in multiple conversations, particularly when it comes to spoofing. Spoofing is becoming a big problem. Do you have any thoughts surrounding identity management, not only with toll-free, but also with geographic numbers?
We fight the same battle on not only just toll-free, but it's on all termination and origination traffic. And so I think there are some things as a entity body. I think SMS has a great opportunity to truly have set out the rules and set the processes so that we truly can have true identity identification markers in the headers of messages. I'd like to see the same thing apply on terminating calls. So that you're able to identify sources of traffic and types of traffic, so that you can manage it and protect the networks appropriately,
Great.
as well as route and build correctly for the call. I'm sure everybody on the call would agree with that.
Okay, great.
It,
Go ahead, Brian.
I actually disagree with that to some extent. I think that there's been this long and deep erosion between NPNXX and geography. I think the path that we've taken in traditional telecom with adding new fields and requiring more and more information to be passed through in signaling and trying to modify these legacy systems to do things that they just frankly weren't designed to do is the wrong path, and it leaves a lot of edge cases and room for error. In terms of some of those concerns, I think some of it can be done on the SCP side. We can do portability correction, as I said, on the SCPs and not worry about JIP. JIP, frankly, is completely unreliable in helping you determine what the originating carrier is or what the originating location is. With mobile calls right now, we have certain mobile companies that pass the JIP of the roaming tower that the cell phone is on, and other ones that show the JIP of the home location. And then we have half of the calls coming in that have absolutely no JIP, and we can go into to mandating all of this, but there are much more elegant solutions that could be done with LNP. Also, I think because the IP transitions aren't something that are years away, we really need to keep in mind the simplicity and elegance of the system. A lot of the functionality we're talking about can be added at the service provider level or even deeper, especially in situations where numbering is completely separated from carrier, where someone can have a telephone number that is assigned to multiple phone numbers. This is a clear requirement that the FCC has set forth for numbering 2.0, that telephone numbers can be assigned to multiple carriers simultaneously. And
well, Bob, thank you, Brian. I actually concur with a great deal of what you said. But Bob, would you like to respond to what Brian pointed out?
Sure. I was not saying that JIP is the ultimate answer, and Brian, I actually agree with you that there are a lot better and more effective ways to use that information. I do think it is important that you get correct location information, and that we do have, the 800 roaming is a big issue in where calls pop into and out of networks, and where it's represented from carriers as to where it comes in and out of networks are vastly different things. And getting some control around that is something that I feel is very important, for our industry, not only to improve the routing of calls, but also to improve the costing of calls.
Yeah, awesome.
One more.
Go ahead. I mean, one of the things here that we've talked about a couple of times in this is JIP, and my God, I've been at the Hill so many times in the last 3 years pushing this for both terminating and origination. I feel like I'm hearing the choir singing right now.
I'm sorry. Is this Doug Davis?
Yeah, this is Doug.
Okay.
Hypercube has put a huge amount of money in pushing for this over the last couple of years. We've had, I don't know, maybe half a dozen ex partes and filings and other briefings and stuff. There's ways to do this in the network that are all technologically useful. JIP just happens to be one of them. And in the land of SIP, there's RFC 5503. The problem isn't technology here. The problem is establishing a leadership path to choose something and work towards a goal. And this is one of the weaknesses we've had in the SMS 800. The box don't care about this as much as we do. This isn't their space. But the rest of us have to deal with the bills and have to deal with the customer complaints. It is our space, and so this is very important. It's not I don't know that it's the pinnacle of the importance of all the things that need to get knocked out over the next couple of years, but it's really high on the list for both 800 and termination type traffic. And honestly, I would rather argue about the technology, but in the end, it's a matter of getting everybody pointed in the same direction and then picking a technology.
Yeah, I agree, Doug. This is Jay, and I think that, you know, the point you're talking to, and I think all, you know, at least the three of you that have just talked about, you know, the sort of the wish list, it's really a complex dance among three things. It's a dance among the technology, the business models, and the policy. And I think that's part of what the industry is grappling with, is how do you get all those three things to work together. So, Doug, I'm going to go back to you for a minute, and I'll pose the same question. During your term on the SMS 800 board, what would be the one thing that you would like to accomplish?
So the answer to that is I would like to see a technology transition, or at least the roadmap put together to one, and that includes a whole lot of things. So I don't want to laser focus on a couple of items in there, but suggest that right now we're dealing with an archaic situation with archaic interfaces, with archaic data environments. All of that needs to be looked at with a very high degree of skepticism and forward thinking toward the future. We do a whole lot of stuff today that is just bewilderingly bad for what we want to accomplish in the network. And certainly it impairs our ability to do IP transitionary stuff or messaging or any of these other things that we could be doing. There's a lot of, I mean just the close-code example I always use is take all the 800 numbers everywhere and the complexity of the 800 database and look at how big it is. And now look at how big your iPhone is. It could fit there. Now, why aren't we taking the technology leap to get to the point where we can do all these fancy things? Is because we're holding ourselves to the existing technology. We've not moved forward there in decades. We got to get this thing pointed in the direction of the post-PC era. We have to be able to build and standardize on some interfaces for things. And then all of this stuff that everybody is wanting at the individual level can be done. But if you wanted to try to graft on some kind of identity management system on the existing platforms, it would be hard. If you wanted to do something like increase the routing ability of the existing platforms, it would be hard. But if you want to evolve the existing platforms over to a technology that is maybe based in this millennia, we might be able to do all these things relatively simple. That's the roadmap that I'd want to see put together on as my tenure. Great,
thank you. I concur, by the way, although I'm not a candidate, so this is Jay. Any comments or questions for Doug and his, I guess one wish, the simple answer would be usher in something that's elegant. Correct?
Well, I mean, elegant, extensible, transparent, all those things that we expect out of a modern architecture today. Mm-hmm. And we're not talking about terribly complex data anymore. But back when the SMS 800 was built, this was hard stuff. It was difficult. I mean, I was a software programmer back in those days, and I had to deal with the SS7 side of this thing. And in fact, there's a lot of code that's still mine, which is scary considering it was 30-something years ago. So it's inappropriate to speculate on what it looks like at the moment, other than to suggest that it's a modernization project, and that should give us more capability and less cost.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go on to Michael Rothschild. Michael, I'll pose the same question to you. During your term on the SMS 800 board of directors, if you had one thing to accomplish, what would that be?
It's a good question. It's a pretty broad question. I think as a general concept, the guys have pretty much outlined the absolute needs of SMS 800 Inc. You know, technological advances are imperative. There's a couple different distinctions, though. One, from my perspective, one was in recent years, SMS developed some new technology based on the desires of the box. And there's a toll-free industry committee called SNAC that wasn't even aware this development was going on until SMS 800 tried to implement it. My goal, one of my primary goals, as a member of the board would to be more effectively, and hopefully in effect by the creation of this board, the nature of this should happen naturally, but would be in effect to strengthen the ties between SMS 800 Inc. as a service provider and not just a tariff entity to where a few entities control the tariff, but as a service provider and identifying what technology to focus on. So it might be some of the stuff that Brian is talking about, where it's more important that things are elegant versus some of the stuff that Bob Beatty's talking about, which is I don't care what the technology is. I care about the effectiveness of the implementation. From my perspective, the way the tariffs are written today, the reason JIP keeps coming up is because it's a legacy technology that's already tariffed. It's already supposed to be there. The fact that the box are choosing to not enforce the existing tariff to require JIP so people can route effectively based on originating location is something that SMS 800 Inc. could change if they controlled the tariff. If entities were more consistent and through ownership of the tariff, if SMS 800 Inc. could create consistency, I think we'd all be better off, because trying to code as a software developer, trying to code to in a dynamic environment is a little bit more difficult than having a clear picture of where the technology is headed. Everyone's rolling in the same direction. Everybody's coding to the same format. We could affect some industry-wide changes in a little bit more timely manner than what the box are offering today, which is a 7 to 10 year timeline for some of the changes that we believe are already required by the tariff. They're just choosing not to enforce it. So in my first year, it would be a strengthening of the relationship between SMS 800 Inc. and the broader community, more narrowly defining the technologies that we want to develop to, and then to Doug Davis's point, developing that roadmap and holding both the vendors and the industry participants accountable to that roadmap. Those are it's a strengthening. It's a software development and a technology development, but it's based on a roadmap with industry input.
Great. Any questions for Michael?
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Michael. I think that your approach to this makes sense. If I were voting for the large Restborg board seat, I would be voting for you, and I think we're completely on the same page.
Okay. I think, Jay, one of the things that this call it really brings to light is, the industry as a whole understands that there's a problem and wants change and progress. The people who will control the tariff today, CenturyLink, AT&T, and Verizon, have chosen consistently to resist what everybody else sees as a natural progression of this organization. So there's a lot of commonality in what we all want, which is progress. It's really that simple, just progress. And there are certain things that we could talk about related to the nuanced distinctions between how do you migrate from legacy technology to new technology. All of those are exceptionally technical and nuanced, but as a general concept, every single one of us wants the same thing. So we just want progress, and we want it sooner rather than later on the Bach timeline.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Doug. We tend to think of the realm of toll-free as sort of being isolated, and in fact, I think one of the things that strikes me, I'm going to just make a little point of opinion, a little editorial comment, but in my view, the time frame is the time fuse is short. I was reading, I think it was today or yesterday, that The name's escaping me right now, but you've got WhatsApp that has approaching 500 million users, and that's roughly twice the size of AT&T. Actually, AT&T has about 116 million users on wireless. And then, God, what's the other one besides WhatsApp? The other one has like 100 million users. It's similar to not WeChat.
Viber.
Viber. That's right.
AR?
Yeah, no, Viber.
Viber and Line are the other two big ones.
Yeah, Viber has 100 million users now, and they're only a few years old. So, the notion that the separation between the old legacy systems and the IP is quickly eroding, and I think it's part of what the point that we can make on this call is that the time frame is the window's closing. So
The window's closing to keep toll-free relevance. You're relevant. You're absolutely right. If SMS 808 doesn't get into the 21st century, people are going to move away from toll-frees because by having that 10-digit number, that's going to be a limiting factor, not an enabling factor, which it has been historically. And that's really what we need to get back to is toll-free, enabling businesses to grow and thrive.
You'd want to see toll-free in a lot of spaces besides this. You'd want to be able to use your toll-free number on your WhatsApp. You'd want to be able to SMS to the toll-free number. You'd want to be able to do a lot of things and have the ability for SMS 800 to facilitate that, not get in the way of it, which is what's kind of happening today.
Exactly. And was that Bob that was speaking? I'm sorry.
That was Doug. I'm sorry, I jumped in.
Doug? Okay. So, let's see. And by the way, just another little comment. In my view, the future of toll-free telephone numbering or telephone number-like addresses is to deliver toll-free broadband. And I think that's a point that's not being talked about much. So, and along those lines, AT&T announced that they're going to be giving some sort of higher quality service level agreement to Netflix, and that was announced today. And I really think that's the direction, and it's a question of whether is the address going to be 1-800-Netflix, or is it going to be Netflix.com to deliver a premium service where the content provider picks up the broadband charges. So, Bayan, I'll ask you the same question to, during your term, if you had a magic wand, what's the one thing that you would want to accomplish during your term?
So we talked about a lot of the technology issues. We talked about some of the regulatory things with regards to how SMS 800 works with organizations like CTIA and so on. But I think fundamentally there's something bigger that needs to be taken care of, which is organizational. The SMS 800 needs to be a responsible organization. We have to build lightweight and flexible systems, and incremental improvement and responding to the needs of the community and to the telecommunications industry, and ultimately users of telephone services is important. We can talk about all the technology changes we want to make today, and 2 years from now it's going to be obsolete. It can seem like the perfect solution. The IP transition is going to happen. We're going to have new internet technologies and data services and everything, and we're going to say, well, why didn't we think of this? Because it just wasn't a requirement. We have to have an organization that can respond to these changes in a timely manner. We have to be able to develop and execute solutions in the space of months rather than decades. And the most important thing for me, and I think where my background really comes in strongly, is working on ways to see how we can structure that within the organization for it to be a responsive, flexible organization, building lightweight things.
Awesome. Okay, so any further questions, comments? Again, you probably need to unmute your line with *6. All right, well, the voting ends on Monday, August the 4th, and there's basically, I think back in January, your voting instructions were sent out to you along with a special password and that sort of thing. So I encourage everyone to vote, and I also would like to, well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your time, your dedication, your commitment to see the toll-free telephone number industry move forward. And you know, it takes something to run for a board of directors like this. So I acknowledge all of you for doing that. Let's see. Any final questions, comments, anything any of you would like to say at this point?
Jay, this is Bob. I'd just like to thank you for putting this together. It was good to hear the common views and goals a lot of us share in the industry. So I appreciate your putting it together.
Yeah, my pleasure, Bob. Thank you. And I would like to bring everybody's attention to something that's happening this Friday that I think could be valuable for you to attend. Dr. Henning Schultz-Rennie, who is the CTO of the FCC, will be on a similar format event called the VoIP User Conference, and that will be at noon Eastern Time. And you can go to V as in Victor, U as in Ulysses, C as in Charlie.me. So vuc.me to see the information on that. But it is an opportunity to speak with Henning directly, and you know, hopefully we'll get an update on what's going on with the numbering test bed as well as some other information. So that's an opportunity, and just in general, the VUC I think is an awesome resource for what's happening in general in this space that we're all dealing with. Randy Resnick puts on a great program there, and that happens every Friday. The PhoneWord Forum is the last Wednesday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern. We don't have a topic just yet for August, but that will be August the 27th. In addition, there are PhoneWord registrar workshops that are happening twice a month as part of an initiative to build a community around the numbering test bed. And you can go to www.phoneword.org to see information on that. We had the folks from FreeSwitch on most recently, and that was a very interesting conversation. And those workshops will be happening August the 13th and August the 20th. And again, you can go to www.phoneword.org to get information there. Beyond that, I again want to thank everybody for participating today. I hope this was valuable to folks. There is an opportunity to make a difference in the existing toll-free telephone number governance structure. This is your opportunity, so please take advantage of it. And unless somebody has any other questions or comments, we will wrap it up for today.
Thanks, Jay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
Bye.